Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 308 with amendments.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 308, resolution expressing the sense of the House of Representatives regarding the establishment of a National Motivation and Inspiration Day.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Virginia, Mrs. Davis, and the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Virginia, Mrs. Davis.
Would the gentlelady yield?
I yield.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the 3 bills just considered, H.R. 2187, 107, and 3334. And I thank the gentlelady for yielding.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlelady from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks on House Resolution 308.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of House Resolution 308, expressing the sense of the House of Representatives in support of the goals of a National Motivation and Inspiration Day. Furthermore, I commend my distinguished colleague from New York, FELIX GRUCCI, for introducing this important resolution. Mr. Speaker, motivation and inspiration have played important roles in the greatest achievements of civilized society and are characteristics common to all great leaders. Both children and adults need motivation and inspiration in order to achieve success and happiness in their lives. Children and young adults need mentors to inspire them to achieve their goals and to motivate them to direct their energies toward positive and constructive activities and goals. Furthermore, the adults who mentor the children and young adults become inspired and motivated themselves. Mr. Speaker, a renewed focus on motivation and inspiration is particularly important in the wake of September 11th tragedies. The inspiration to define goals at school, home, and work, and the motivation to achieve those goals is critical to achieving success and happiness in our current trying circumstances. Mr. Speaker, the beginning of the year is often a time of reflection, planning, and goal setting. For that reason, prominent citizens of Long Island, New York, are attempting to establish January 2nd as National Motivation and Inspiration Day. This would set a good example for the rest of our nation and provide all with the focus of maintaining motivation and inspiration in their lives. If successful, their efforts would provide an opportunity for the people of the United States to focus on the importance of maintaining motivation and inspiration in their lives. Mr. Speaker, I urge all members to support this important resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Ladies, reserve the balance of her time. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume. It is with great pride that I rise to endorse H.Res. 308, a resolution expressed in support of the House of Representatives of the goals of a National Motivation and Inspiration Day. I commend my colleague, Representative GRUCCI from New York, for introducing such a resolution and call upon all members of the House to begin to focus on the importance of motivation and inspiration, especially as we embark upon a new year, 2002. After reading H.Res. 308, I was immediately reminded of an important passage in the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. This passage discusses the love man can have for his fellow man and how we should not worry about ourselves, but worry about others. The ideals embodied in the 1 Corinthians passage not only embraces the message contained in H.Res. 308, they also speak to 2 legislative proposals we will consider today, H.R. 3072 and H.R. 3379. H.R. 3072 seeks to honor Mr. Vernon Tarleton, a man of great faith and dedication to his community, by naming a post office after him in his hometown. H.R. 3379 names a post office after New York City Fire Department Chief of Rescue Operations, Mr. Ray Downey. Chief Downey, a firefighter for 39 years, died at the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. These 2 men are and were great leaders who directed their energies towards positive and constructive activities and goals. Chief Downey led a New York Fire Department special unit to assist in recovery efforts at the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. He directed rescue efforts at the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center and helped the Federal Emergency Management Agency found the National Network Search and Rescue Team. He truly motivated and inspired and led the way for his team. He did not worry about himself, rather he directed his efforts to save others. Mr. Tarleton spent his lifetime working on behalf of others in his community and along the way being recognized for his efforts. In a time of uncertainty in the world and here at home, at a time when we as a nation are called upon to show greater compassion and appreciation for the diversity of our people and religious faiths, we need to take stock and focus on the importance of maintaining motivation and inspiration in our lives. As part of that, we must open our arms wide and embrace and educate our children and young adults. They too must learn the value of helping others, not for glory, but because it is the right thing to do. And so, Mr. Speaker, I again commend my colleague for introducing this measure and urge its swift passage, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman has reserved the balance of his time. The gentlelady from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield to my distinguished colleague from New York, Mr. GRUCCI, as much time as he may consume.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Mr. Speaker, in the wake of September 11th attacks against our nation, it's now more important than ever to live each day with a sense of renewed spirit. It is for this reason that I stand before you today in support of my bill, H.R. 308, which supports the goals of a National Motivation and Inspiration Day. Throughout history, motivation and inspiration have been vital components of all great movements. They are qualities that have played an invaluable role in the intellectual movements, the civil rights movements, the suffrage movements, and many more. All great leaders from Martin Luther King Jr. and Winston Churchill to Ronald Reagan and Mother Teresa have all shared, among other things, the ability to motivate the masses and inspire them to achieve great goals. In our daily lives, we look to our teachers, parents, coaches, and clergy to do the same. Whether it's in the victory at the end of a sporting event, a record-breaking year in the sales department, making the dean's list, or earning the rank of officer in our fine military forces, progress and betterment for all the people is certain to arise from motivation and inspiration. On September 11th, we were all inspired by the hundreds of firefighters, police officers, and rescue workers who ran up and into the Twin Towers to save lives of the thousands of people while sacrificing their own. The actions of these brave men and women on September 11th have motivated each American to do something to better contribute to the good of our society. Today, we need to publicly recognize the importance of motivation and inspiration in our daily lives. House Resolution 308 supports the goals of celebrating National Motivation and Inspiration Day on January 2nd of each year, a time that is traditionally used for reflection, planning, and goal setting. There is no better time to celebrate motivation and inspiration than during the season of New Year's resolutions, when we're all trying to find ways to maintain our goals throughout the year. While this resolution does not directly designate this day, it highlights the importance of motivation and inspiration and the valuable role these qualities should play in the education of our children in the United States and around the globe. I would like to thank the Government Reform Committee Chairman Dan Burton and Majority Leader Dick Armey and their staff for helping me bring this measure to the floor. I would also like to thank my constituent and my friend Kevin McCrudden, whose birthday it is today, for coming up with this idea and for working closely with me and my staff to see that this comes to fruition. And Mr. Speaker, you don't have to be inspired by the greatest things in life. It's some of the more smaller things that inspire people to move to greatness. One of the things that has inspired and motivated me on this House floor is the day that I traveled to New York with the congressional delegation to visit the infamous Ground Zero. And as I was walking down the streets and getting closer and closer and recognizing the enormity of the damage and the severity of what transpired, the pain in the people's hearts as I moved closer What inspired me most was the passion in the eyes of the firefighters and the police officers, as you can look down into their soul and see what motivated them. That's what's been motivating me here on this floor, to continue that fight and to help them to move and to accomplish the things that they've set out to accomplish. Mr.